HD3 Perot, Las Vegas. CBS Sports Radio, 1140, a radio.com station. The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
All right, it is week 17, 2018 season. Guess what, folks? The season's going to be over today for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to start calling them the Las Vegas Raiders.
You might as well. They're probably not going to be in Oakland ever again.
That's right. This is Scott Gulbransen, host of the Silver and Black Today, along with my co-host, Matt Gutierrez. Matt, how was your holiday, man?
It was good, man. We had a lot of fun. We got the kids a foosball table.
A foosball table?
Foosball. But that was one of, believe it or not, on our cruise, all the amazing stuff to do. We had so much fun as a family just playing foosball, competing, because we're a ridiculously competitive family. Had so much fun on that trip doing that my wife and I decided, you know what, we need to bring a piece of this home. So we got ourselves a foosball table. We already have the dry erase board out with the tally marks on it, and it's on now, in our house.
Does the foosball table allow players to flop?
There is no flopping in the foosball league in my home. We don't have floppers, man.
Yeah, that's, it's
no Neymar in our house.
It's the soccer stuff. Anyway, but we are back here to talk about American football. And of course, the Raiders take on the Kansas City Chiefs today in their final game of 2018. I know a 2018 that no one has been satisfied with due to the Raiders record, but we have seen bright spots here at the end. And we're going to talk about that today as well. We're going to also, just to give you a sense for what's going on in the show today, Vinny
Who?
Every 3 weeks I have one of those when I try to say Vinny's name. It shouldn't be for a Paisan. Vinny Bonsignore from the Athletic Los Angeles will join us, and we'll walk through him some news this morning, which we'll get to in a second, on the Raiders and relocation for 2019 and what he's hearing. Also, playoff picture, who's hot, who's not. And the coaching hot seat, we got to visit that, Matt. I mean, we're talking about the Raiders. There's no issue with the Raiders and
it depends on who you ask.
And hot seat, they already fired their GM and they got rid of half their team. So not a lot of mystery there for the Raiders, but we'll talk to Vinny about that. Also, bottom of the hour, one of my favorite guys in the business, and that is Carrington Harrison from 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. Carrington is great. He's going to be on with the preview of the Chiefs game. Tell us how the Chiefs are and what their mindset is, and this heated rivalry, of course, with Kansas City. John Gruden said in the postgame meeting with the team after their Monday night victory this past week how much he and the team and the organization don't like the Chiefs, and they have the opportunity to play spoiler here, Matt, which is a big deal.
I love that. They made sure that the Broncos had their first back-to-back losing seasons since the 70s, which was great. Their win against the Steelers this year has all but kept them out of the playoffs. The Steelers need to win and need some help today. And they can bump the Chiefs down from the number 1 to the number 5 seed.
It's a big deal,
man. They can go in there and win. I mean, what else do you have to play for at this point if you're the Raiders? The second half of the season, you've been a better team than what you started out as, but the playoffs were over by week 5, really. I mean, we knew this team wasn't going anywhere at that point.
Right.
Why not play the role of spoiler? Go out there, play for pride, play for yourself, play to ruin somebody else's year, especially when it's a rival, and they've got a chance to do that, so have fun with it.
No, it's going to be a fun game, I think. A tough one. The Raiders, I think, have a shot, and we're going to go over that as well. Later in the show, we're going to talk about the 2018 season. Even though it's not over yet, we're going to start to and we'll do that in subsequent weeks. Matt has talked through kind of what we've learned, the good, the bad. We'll also have attorney Michael Troiano in. He is our Silver and Black Today legal expert. There has been some arrests in the NFL in December, including a former Raider.
Shocking.
I'll tease that in case people don't know yet. A former Raider was arrested. Who it was will not surprise you. 2003. And we'll talk with him. Also, though, Michael, he's a sponsor of the show, of course. But Matt, we're coming up, and you work in the service industry. It is New Year's Eve. People drink a lot. It's Las Vegas, and so Michael Troiano is a criminal defense attorney. He's going to also talk to us about why you need to call an Uber, call a Lyft, call a friend, Tipsy Tow. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They have all these services out there to make sure that if you go out and have a good time, don't get in a car, don't kill somebody, don't go to jail and ruin your life.
Yeah, and you have no reason to get in a car. The Strip is wide open for 12 hours on New Year's Eve. Just run around and be ridiculous out there. I'm not on the Strip anymore, so this will be the first year that I don't have to watch these knuckleheads running through the casino, screaming and yelling for 6 hours about how the clock's about to hit midnight. And I'm extremely happy about that.
Thank you for doing that, by the way, idiots, because you make sure we don't have state income tax. By the way, have you seen, I don't know, the RJ usually does it in the local TV stations. It seems like every day this holiday season, they post the live video from the cameras on I-15 going to California and the 8-hour line it takes. Why does anybody do that?
I met some people the other night who drove in. This was, what is today? Sunday? I don't even know what day it is anymore. Friday night, they drove in. This is Friday night, okay? New Year's Eve isn't until Monday night. This was Friday. They drove in from San Diego. That's usually about, you've done that drive 100 times, 5-hour-ish drive, right, on average. Took them almost 8 hours to get here.
8 hours.
8 hours.
To come to Vegas and support our economy. Thank you so much.
You drive to the Bay in 8 hours. Raider fans, you can get down here in 8 hours if you ever want to come to a game.
Well, yeah, and they're going to have to, right, because they're going to be here in a year and a half. So we have all that going too. So it's going to be a fun show today, and hopefully everyone out there had a great Christmas or holiday season as we come on New Year's. And next week will be our first show of 2019. So we'll preview that a little bit later too. Now, some breaking news this morning, Matt, as we've seen coming from the UK, and that is the Daily Mail, which is not exactly the paper of record for the UK, but nonetheless, it's credible. It's being also discussed by NFL writers who we do know are credible and who have been accurate in things in the past. Talking about that Tottenham, where the Raiders were supposed to play this year before the game was canceled due to the stadium not being completed. There is this headline from the Daily Mail: Tottenham may share their new ground, i.e. stadium, for those of you who don't speak the Queen's English, with the Oakland Raiders NFL team during the 2019. The Raiders need a home. They are currently in talks with Tottenham about sharing their new stadium. The new White Hart Lane is still under construction after multiple setbacks. So they're in this report says that they're in talks to play at the 62,000-seater. I'm using British English again. Cedar Tottenham Stadium, which is a beautiful facility, don't get me wrong. But we've heard this idea about the Raiders playing majority of their games in London. I don't like the fact that they're thinking, or at least the story suggests, that possibly the entire home schedule could be played there. I think that would be really bad. I've always said 2 games, everybody's, well, the 1 game, but no, I've said about 2. I think that would be fair. Like you said during the pre-broadcast, Matt, maybe bookend those so you don't have to travel that much.
And that's the biggest problem logistically. Yeah. You can't have a team playing that far away every other week, or 8 times a year, or however you're going to schedule it out. That's if your facilities are in Oakland, which they're going to be. That's where everything's at. That's where the training facilities at. Their offices are at. The practice fields are at. That's a 14-hour drive. 14-hour flight. 14-hour flight across
Underwater.
the ocean to get to a home game. That's not. It just doesn't make any sense logistically to have to do that. The bookend thing. If you're going to play maybe week 2 and week 14 in London, that's really not going to make that big a difference. It's a road trip you could do, and the Raiders have done it before, where they stayed in Florida for 2 weeks because they had 2 games in Florida.
Right.
They've gone from an East Coast game to London before, so they have basically a 2-week road trip there. But to expect a team to do that 8 times a year it's a little ridiculous.
Well, the report is crediting Ray Glazer, which is really Jay Glazer.
Jay's younger brother.
Yeah,
Ray.
I don't know. Maybe they use R's instead of J's in the UK. No, just kidding. London is. He says, this is a quote: London is now an option for the Raiders. It is being discussed, which we kind of already knew. It is being discussed for them to play there next year. They are still trying to figure it out. The Raiders are discussing it. Do they play 4 home games, 4 away games, and back and forth again?
It's a nightmare. I can't stand the London thing to begin with. I really can't. I've never liked the fact that they go overseas to play home games. They're taking home games away from home fans to go to a market that largely doesn't care about the sport. Now, that's not to say they don't have fans that will go, because they sell out the stadium. That's fine. But put that game up against a Man U game
Oh, well,
who's watching?
Yeah, that's,
you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Put a Man U game in the States against an NFL game. Everybody's watching the NFL game. That's just the way it is. Why are you taking
those soccer nuts will argue with you on that, but
well,
I agree.
12
I
of
agree
them?
with you.
Bring it, soccer nuts. Ridiculous.
It's the future sport of America.
Yeah,
not so.
I've been hearing that since I was about 10.
Yes, but here's the thing, and I agree with you on this. Here's the only thing that I would say. If I'm the Raiders, and this is to benefit all of you, Las Vegas. If I'm the Raiders, I say, okay, we'll play 2, 3, maybe even 4 games in London, NFL, but you move us up in the NFL Super Bowl rotation so that Las Vegas gets a Super Bowl the year after L.A. Okay?
They should get 55. It's Super Bowl LV.
Well, dude.
Come on. How did they drop the ball on that
Ladies and
one?
gentlemen, you just heard the genesis of a campaign that will be run by Matt Gutierrez and will light the world on fire.
How in the world did they miss that?
I know. But to me, that's what I'm saying, though. I would do that. It's going to be a crazy year. You're going to be vagabonds no matter what happens. I would do London for more than 1 or 2 games if there's some kind of sweetheart deal there, meaning that I get maybe more TV games. I get some more Monday night games, Sunday night games, whatever it is when we get to Vegas. I also get the Super Bowl earlier because that benefits the entire region here in Las Vegas and all of us, whether you like football or not. To me, that would be good.
I can't believe Gruden hasn't just asked him for another draft pick. I mean, that seems to be what he does anyways. Just get another draft pick out of this deal. We'll play 16 games in London. Give us another number 1 pick.
They'll trade Derek Carr for Beckham. Is that what you're saying?
God.
No, that won't work
He's
out.
about 20 years past his prime, man.
That is true. The one thing I wanted to get to real quickly is, and this is on a personal note, but the media in Las Vegas know this well. And the joy of Christmas, one of my favorite times of the year, Matt, and I know yours too. But this year, unfortunately, the Las Vegas media and the national media lost someone very special and dear to our hearts, a native Nevadan, a personal friend of mine. In fact, he was, when I was at the Las Vegas Bowl, December 15th, tweeting some pictures of my kids, and Royce Fior, who was a longtime writer at the Review-Journal here, a boxing writer, member of the Southern Nevada Hall of Fame, member of the Boxing Hall of Fame, passed away at the age of 79. He tweeted at me that day about my pictures of my kids. And my wife was homesick, and he was, is their mom okay? He was always a caring guy, loved pets, loved kids, would call me when he saw me post pictures of my kids playing lacrosse or whatever it was. He was just a wonderful, wonderful human being, besides being a Hall of Fame writer. But Royce passed away, and just a reminder, he tweeted at me that day. I was busy. I was out with my family. I didn't answer him. And he passed away a few days later. Royce was suffering from CPOD or COPD, and for a long time. So he'd been sick for a long time. But Royce passed away, and it's a loss for all of us. And I just wanted to thank him for his friendship and his interest in my family and kids. And he did this with all the people he knew, all the people he worked with. There's been great tributes by writers, including Ron Kantowski at the RJ, including other folks, Kevin Ioli from Yahoo Sports, who covers boxing, who worked a lot with him. So I just want to he was an amazing guy. And just make sure you reach out to people. You never know when it'll be the last time. Make sure you take the time to do that. But just wanted to say, that we hope Royce is at peace, and we all will miss him very, very much. And Matt, I know you as a boxing fan, you read Royce a lot. You know who he was, and you encountered him as well. So
yeah, we talked about it yesterday on Adrenaline. Tony, like you, good friend of his, knew him for a long time. I never had the pleasure of actually meeting him. But, yeah, I followed Royce for a while. He's definitely, in this community especially, somebody who's going to be dearly missed.
He is. And so we say goodbye to Royce. And if you don't know much about him, go read about him. But it was a fun time. So that we will say goodbye to our friend Royce, and we will move on here. When we come back from the break, we are going to be joined, as we are every week, by Vinny Bonsignore from the Athletic Los Angeles. Vinny will talk with us about the latest with the Raiders and where they might play next year. And also he'll tell us, we'll talk about a little bit about NFL playoffs and coaching hot seat. Also, you can always call in 702-889-5978. We will give away 2 more Raiders flags today. That is silver and black today.
I like it.
Flags. So make sure you give us a call, 702-889-5978. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the law office of Michael A. Troiano. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
To the Silver and Black. Oh, there we go. David Stepanian, our engineer, was talking to Matt about UNLV basketball, which is a waste of time.
It gets heated in here.
It's a waste of time, and he didn't get me on the air fast enough. But that's okay. Now he's back. All right, we are going now out on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line, where we bring in our favorite guy down in Los Angeles Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic LA. Vinny, how you doing, man? How was your Christmas?
Christmas was fine. Getting ready for the new year, getting ready to see who the Rams, well, first of all, if they have a week off, or if they have to turn around and play again next Sunday. We'll find out around 4:30 today what that situation is going to be all about.
Right, and that's the thing, too, is everybody, everybody takes some time off around the holidays. Usually you guys as NFL writers and those of us who cover the league don't. I mean, we get a little time here and there, don't get me wrong. But for you, like people say, oh, well, Vinny, hey, if the Rams get a bye week, you get a week off. It's like, no, I still got a file. I still got stories to tell.
Exactly.
It doesn't slow down. In fact, it heats up because it is the NFL playoffs. Now, Vinny, let's talk about, I don't know, the report this morning and the talk about the Raiders to London is heating up a little bit as we head into the final week of the NFL regular season. What are you hearing about this? I've always said, hey, you know what, you play 2, maybe 3 games over there. What Jay Glazer is saying now is that the Raiders are actually talking about playing most of their home season. What are you hearing from your sources inside the league?
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to, what we've been saying for, almost all season now, or at least since, Oakland started becoming less and less of an option because of the lawsuit that's going on up there. But, there's no shortage of cities and venues that would love to accommodate the Raiders in 2019. And, they're kind of just sorting through all of those options. And you keep seeing there's the one in San Francisco, now the one in London. You'll hear San Antonio, San Diego. It's just reflective of how much interest there really is, to accommodate the Raiders for next year on that 1-year basis. And the Raiders are working through all of that. There's nothing that's been ruled in. There's nothing that's been ruled out. I think ideally they would like to see if something can work out in the Bay Area, kind of as a tip of the cap to the great fans that have supported them over the years there. But they're not ruling anything out at this point, and I think all these reports that you see is reflective of that.
Vinny, how have you done the London trip, first of all?
Vinny, you there?
Did we lose Vinny?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, have you done the London trip yourself with an NFL team?
Yes, absolutely.
How difficult? Talk about how difficult that is, because this talk about the Raiders being there for 8 weeks out of the season. Talk about how difficult that would be logistically for that team to have to go overseas that often to play "quote unquote" home games.
You're talking about for the Raiders to do it, or for other teams to do it?
For the Raiders to have to do it
multiple
that
times.
many times during the year.
For the Raiders to, for that to, there would have to be definitely some kind of, I would imagine, some tweaking with the schedule. They would have to probably do a situation where when they came back over to the United States, they'd have to do like a 2 or 3 game, situation here in the United States. At least 2, I would imagine. And, they would have to set up some sort of a home base near wherever the 2 cities are, they're going to be playing. And I would imagine that for teams going over to play them, you'd see a lot of them coming over after their bye week probably. You would see teams that were going to the East Coast for 1 week and then flying, over to London for the next game. So, there's only so much that you could do, though, from the NFL's perspective, because they've got 31 other teams and 31 other venues to have to, figure out a schedule for. But I would think that, there would have to be some sort of a way that the Raiders can come back to the United States for a couple of weeks at a time to play their schedule, their away schedule. It's
funny that you mentioned the bye weeks, because as much as I've been talking about how difficult that would be, I didn't even think about the fact that every one of these games they play on overseas, these London games or Mexico City or whatever it is, the following week is always a bye week. So you can do that once a year, no problem. You get that bye week because of the long travel. How could you do that many times a season? It's just not possible.
It's certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I'm sure that they would try to accommodate it as much as possible if they can. Again, putting together an NFL schedule is a difficult undertaking as it is. So when you're talking about a team that's in London, but here's the thing. They're eventually going to have to do that anyway, because I do believe that there's going to be a team in London, before long. So this would be a really interesting, kind of a good way to do a little bit of a trial run on how that would look and how that would work. And, obviously the Raiders brand transfers all over the world. So I think that they would be a good team if it went down that road. They would be a great team to be in London for a year, and for the league to be able to take a look at what something like that would look like.
Now, Vinny, we're talking to Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic in Los Angeles. Now, Vinny, one of the things I've said is, hey, if you're the Raiders, as much as that would be difficult to play most of your home games, even though you won't have a home in 2019 perhaps, if there's some sort of deal done, and we know these deals, and I've talked to you about it many times, happen in the NFL, sometimes off the record, sometimes on the record, which is, if I'm the Raiders, I say, hey, look, we'll play in Oakland. We need a place to play. But does that maybe allow the Raiders to tell the NFL, hey, listen, you need to move up Las Vegas in the Super Bowl rotation? I mean, is there some kind of dealing that could go on there so that the NFL gets their trial run with a team in London to see how it works, and then the Raiders get something else on the back end?
I mean, I'm not sure it would be the Super Bowl. Those are, there's other cities that are involved in that, and there's only so much wiggle room that they have, to be able to play with. So I'm not quite sure it would be something along those lines. But I'm sure that if the NFL was insistent on saying, hey, we really prefer you guys to go to London for a lot of different reasons, how can we help you? Is there something that we can do? And not to say that any of that would be underhanded or anything like that, but I'm sure that there might be some room in there to make it work on both ends.
Hey, Vinny, one question. We have a listener of ours, Ed Marshall, who's actually up in Alaska. He listens to us all the way from there. He had a question for you because of your expertise in relocation. He wanted to know how the relocation payment that the Raiders are going to pay that arrangement with the NFL. How is that set up? How do they pay? Is it a one-time fee? Have they already paid it, or is it doled out over the next few years?
Yeah, it's doled out. There's just payments start, I believe, either the first year that they're in Las Vegas or the second year. But just like the Rams and the Chargers as well, you could pay it out over a period of time. I do think there's a provision to do it in one lump sum. I don't think that any of the teams are gonna utilize that that way of doing it. So it gets billed to them basically, for lack of a better term, over the course of time in installment payments.
Vinny, jump over to the Rams real quick. You guys, you mentioned it early on. Are you gonna play next week? Is there going to be a bye week? The Rams have kind of sputtered a little bit over the last few weeks of the season. How much of that is due to the fact that they've been on cruise control for a little bit? They've been so good. They've been at the top of the NFC, if not the top team, until the Saints took over. And is there some worrying going on there in L.A. going into the San Francisco game, because San Francisco has looked like a decent football team lately?
Yeah, and the Rams absolutely expect the best punch from the 49ers. They've been getting everybody's best punch this year, it seems, and I think that's going to actually bode well for them in the playoffs. I did some research on Super Bowl teams and how they fared in December. It's kind of interesting, actually, that 6 of the last 10 teams that advanced to the Super Bowl and 5 out of the last Super Bowl teams that won the Super Bowl were either at 500 or below in the month of December. I don't know what it is about this month. Sometimes it could be that teams are so far out in front, a la the Rams, that maybe they subconsciously take their foot off the gas just a little bit. And then you also have the factor of other teams have a lot to play for, depending on their circumstance. They played the Chicago Bears. They were in a fight for a division championship. Meanwhile, the Rams had basically solidified their division championship, and it was going to take a complete slip-up not to be able to get that first round bye. There's a lot of factors, and I don't think it's really indicative of the Rams. I think they're going to be fine. I see them getting at least to the NFC Championship game. Yeah,
and take into account as well, look at the Saints this week. They've already said they're resting a ton of people, guys. Drew Brees included. So I'm sure that factors into that record as well, where you have a bunch of starters that aren't even on the field for Week 17.
All right, Vinny.
Yeah.
It's time to cut out, buddy. So listen, we will catch up with you. Hopefully you get a little bye week so you can do some fun features.
Well, we'll see. I have a feeling I might be in Chicago next week. Let's just put it that way. To take a look at whoever, it's a very good chance that it's going to be the Bears that the Rams play regardless. I think the Rams win today, and I think they get the bye week. And we'll see if the Bears take care of business next week, and if so, they're coming to the Coliseum.
That'll be a fun time. And make sure you go read Vinny Bonsignore on The Athletic Los Angeles. Great publication, great writer. Vinny, we'll talk to you next time. Take care, buddy.
All right, guys, take care.
Vinny Bonsignore from The Athletic in Los Angeles. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Science this morning at 10 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Callers and guests on the Newsmaker line are brought to you by the law office of Michael A. Troiano. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
Welcome back, everybody. 2 days left in 2018. The final Sunday for the Raiders. There will be no playoffs, as we know.
Go away, 2018.
By the way, one of our favorite guys in the world who keeps kind of Raider Nation historically woke is AFL Godfather on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you talk with him a lot. He just wanted to make sure that I reminded you that Doug Martin says hello.
Yeah, I saw that from him. And I am going to put 0. Listen up, guys.
Uh-oh.
0 stock into an Oakland-born native kid going out on what is most likely the last game ever in the Coliseum on Monday Night Football against the rival Broncos, having a good game.
Yeah.
He couldn't have a bad game. There was no way he was going to have a bad game in that spot. So settle down, Scott.
Hey, it's not just me. He has done what they've asked him to do.
He has. You know what? He has.
And I think we'll talk about it a little
Still
later.
Not the answer, though.
We're going to talk about it with Carrington here in a second. I think Doug Martin has to have a big day against the Chiefs, and we're going out now on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line to Kansas City, and we bring in from 610 Sports in Kansas City one of my favorite guys, Carrington Harrison. Carrington, how you doing, my man?
Hey, how are you guys doing this morning?
Doing great.
We're doing really well. Okay, buddy, so here we go. We got a big game for the Chiefs. The Raiders, of course, are out of the playoffs, so for them, this is a big game. They get to try to be spoilers. They get to try to make the Chiefs go from a number 1 seed hosting throughout the playoffs in the AFC side to perhaps being a 5th seed. How fired up is this Chiefs team knowing that it's Raiders week, but also that so much is on the line for them?
Raiders week, I would say, hasn't really resonated that much in Kansas City just because of the holidays, and the Raiders just haven't really been good this season. More of the concern here locally has just been about the Chiefs and how they played. I mean, the Chiefs have lost 3 in their last 5 games, so I think the level of anxiousness and anticipation for the game would kind of be consistent no matter who they were playing. I guess any other team than the Broncos. I think the Chiefs fans kind of consider the Broncos to be their rival now at this point. But no, much more of the conversation this week has been about the Chiefs and how they're playing an MVP consideration for Patrick Mahomes, more so than it being Raider week.
Hey, Carrington, Matt Gutierrez here. I wanted to ask you about the tone with the Kansas City fans when it comes to Andy Reid. He's got that reputation, man. You get into December, you get into January, and he kind of falls apart, makes the wrong decisions. His teams don't win. Alex Smith had a little bit of that. Now he's gone. Has the play of Pat Mahomes elevated Andy Reid's status out there to say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter what his rep has been late in the season. We've got this guy now, and he's going to take the Chiefs all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's really changed that much for Andy Reid. Like, whatever you thought about Andy Reid and his ability to coach the quarterback position and the ability to coach offense has pretty much been consistent. I mean, you guys could probably understand. I mean, the defense has been the one that's been receiving the most bullets and the arrows from fans. It hasn't been anything for the offense. I mean, you think about it, the Chiefs' offense, at least there for a time, was playing like the 99 Rams, the 07 Patriots, that Broncos team from a few years ago, and Peyton Manning threw 50 touchdown passes. So, I mean, the offense has played at an all-time historic kind of pace. Their defense has played at an all-time historic pace, just on the opposite. I saw a stat that the Chiefs are, I think, 4 first downs away from giving up the most first downs in the history of the NFL. So yeah, nothing has really changed, I think, in terms of fans' thought process when it comes to Andy Reid. A lot of it has been centered toward the defense. Well,
and Andy Reid, speaking of Andy Reid, needs 1 win, which could come today, to pass ex-Chiefs coach Marty Schottenheimer, who had 205 for the 7th most wins in NFL history. And, of course, Marty had the same reputation, right, about in the playoffs, and later with the Chargers, the same thing. He was a great football coach, and certainly what he's going through now with his health is unfortunate, and it's good that his sons and his family are spreading out. Now, when we look at the Chiefs, too, and this matchup, Carrington, so much has been made, as you mentioned, about that Chiefs offense and how great it's been. But then you have the defensive side, and you have an Oakland Raider offense that is doing better. Derek Carr, as I talked to you earlier in the week, has settled in finally into John Gruden's offense and is performing at a much better clip. What are the Chiefs going to do you think, with the defensive side to prepare themselves not only for today but then for a run in the playoffs?
I don't really think, at least from a fan perspective, again, that there's any really worry about Oakland. Like, I don't think there's a lot of respect for the Oakland Raiders in this, but I don't think a lot of people have maybe paid attention to how the Raiders have played the last 6 weeks As you guys alluded to, the Raiders are 3-3 over the last 6 weeks. They're playing better football. When it comes defensively, I think it's kind of a mindset of this defense has just performed a lot better at home than they have been on the road. But I do expect the Chiefs to come out and play with a little bit different intensity and a little different fire because they're back at home. And I think there's a belief that the offense at home, you can kind of punch Oakland early. It's going to be cold. It's like 40 degrees here. That Oakland might kind of wither under they don't have much to play for today.
Yeah, the Chiefs 6-1 at home, 20 of 22 against the AFC West. They're also 13-4 in December over the past 4 seasons. And as you mentioned, the offense, 530 points this season. I mean, just phenomenal. I don't see how the Raiders, Matt and Carrington, can stop this Chiefs team. To have a chance, they have to try to contain Mahomes. But I just don't see it. And then you have Travis Kelce, who lit up the Chiefs. I mean, Carrington, talk about Travis Kelce. What a year he's having. 1,274 yards, 5 100-yard receiving games. I mean, how much fun is he to watch on a weekly basis?
Oh, he's been incredible. Kelce's less than 70 yards away from having the most receiving yards any tight end had it in a single season. I think Gronk is the one that holds the record. I mean, you go from how great Tony Gonzalez was here in Kansas City. He actually just got put into the Chiefs Ring of Honor during the Chargers game. That I never thought I would see a tight end that even played close to the level that Tony Gonzalez played at for so many years in Kansas City. But that's the level that Travis Kelce's played at. I mean, I think if you look at the Chiefs, I mean, the Chiefs have a chance, I think, to have 5 guys be All-Pro this year. Mahomes certainly has a chance to be All-Pro. Tyreek Hill has a chance to be Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and Dee Ford. Like, they've had 5 guys play as well as you can play their respective positions.
Yeah, and the Raiders have historically had a really tough time covering tight ends. Over the last 10, 15 years, they haven't been able to cover any of them, and we saw Kelce have a huge game, over 100 yards and a couple touchdowns just a few weeks ago when the Chiefs went into Oakland. I want to go back to what you said about the whole rivalry thing. We talked to Rich Gannon a few weeks ago, and he was a Kansas City Chief before he came over to the Raiders, and he talked about that rivalry and how big it was for the Chiefs every single time they played the Raiders, and it was Raiders week, and you mentioned the holidays, and the fans haven't been into it. It's surprising to hear that the players aren't into it as much. How much of that has to do with just culture in the locker room now where guys are friends with players throughout the league, and how much of that has to do with just the Raiders have completely fallen off the map over the last 15 years?
I think it's a lot more of the second thing that you said. Like, I don't think there is a disrespect from the players when it comes to the Raiders. But I think, like anything, like the players kind of feed off the energy from the city. And I think Kansas City, that Denver has become their rival. If you think about it, I mean, Chiefs played on Monday Night Football against the Broncos earlier this season. They played big-time games on Sunday Night Football. The Broncos had Peyton Manning. That more of the rivalry and that hate is directed towards the Broncos. We talked about this earlier in the year whenever the Chiefs and the Raiders had their first matchup. I mean, they've only played 2 games where both teams had a winning record over the last 10 seasons. Like, these 2 teams just don't play in big, meaningful games. And I think in pro sports, a lot of it just has to be based in competitiveness of, are you 2 fighting and playing for the same thing? And I guess way more Oakland's reason than the Chiefs' reasons. They just haven't been playing for the same thing in quite a long time.
No, they haven't. And again, we're speaking to Carrington Harrison from 610 Sports in Kansas City. Now, Carrington, I mean, on the defensive side, 2 guys that have just put up an amazing year and I think are going to have a huge game against Oakland's young and struggling at times offensive line. And that, of course, is defensive end Chris Jones. 11 consecutive games with a sack. He has 15.5 this season. And, of course, then you have at linebacker Dee Ford with 12 sacks and 6 forced fumbles. Those guys have really, I mean, just come into their own. They're probably licking their chops today, aren't they?
No, absolutely. I mean, I kind of look at this Chiefs team where their defense kind of works this way. If they get pressure, kind of like most teams, they're going to have a lot of success. Like Chris Jones, if he gets a sack, which he does in most games, Dee Ford, if he gets to the quarterback, they're going to have a chance to get off the field. If they don't get a sack on that drive, you are going to score on the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, they've just shown very little resistance. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, top-end talent for the Chiefs defensively is actually pretty good. Chris Jones has had a great season, as you alluded to. Dee Ford's had a great season. Allen Bailey, he's kind of like a B-level player on the team. Like, he's not one of their stars, but a solid kind of rotation guy. He's been really good this year. Kendall Fuller, I think he's going to play. He's been good this year. But, man, after you get out about their 4 top defensive players, there's a wide gap in this team defensively. I think the positive for Oakland's going to be, if you can protect Derek Carr just a little bit, you certainly can move the ball against the Chiefs, because to me, the overall blueprint of how to score on the Chiefs is out there. Keep the offense on the field for the Chiefs as long as you can and sustain drives. And last week against Seattle, their offense was on the field for 80 snaps.
Wow.
Like Seattle was just playing a ball control. We're going to run the ball. We're happy to take 4 yards here and 5 yards here, and then keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. So how to beat the Chiefs is out there. Now, whenever the Chiefs get the ball, they're going to score.
Well, and it's going to be interesting. And Carrington, we run out of time, my friend. I appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care, man.
All right, Carrington Harrison from 610 Sports, Kansas City. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Oh, boy. We're having fun teasing our crack engineer.
PAT props, man.
David Stepanian.
That's where it's at.
David Stepanian, who's misguided. No, he's not misguided. We're just giving him crap. You are back here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas, streaming worldwide on radio.com. If you're listening to us on audio, thank you. You can also catch the show on demand after, but usually within about an hour after we have the show up on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, you name it, up on our website, silverandblacktoday.com. So if you miss it or you want to re-listen to it because our voices just make you feel happy, you can do that. You can also watch us, by the way. You can watch us live on Facebook, on our Facebook page, and on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and on Twitter. We stream via Periscope. So there's no way you can get around it. You can find us anywhere on Sunday mornings while you're drinking your coffee. I got mine here, which I go through about 12 of them on a Sunday. But we are here talking about the Raiders. The Raiders off to Kansas City today. As you know, later they flexed the game. We were going to be Matt, we were actually going to be pregame in that the game would have been coming up here at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, but they flexed it to later in the day. So it's going to be a 1 o'clock game here in Las Vegas. But how do you feel about this game going in?
Somebody asked me that yesterday, just a buddy of mine, because he went out and placed a bet on the Raiders to win money line. And I said, I can see this team keeping it close. I think that they have the offense. We were just talking about that with Carrington a second ago. The Raiders have the offense to be able to keep up with the Chiefs. We saw that in Oakland. It was a 7-point game. The game was never out of reach. They were in it till the end, and it's hard to slow that Kansas City offense down, especially when you don't have even a top half of the league defense, and the Raiders don't have that. You're not going to get the same kind of performance from the Raiders defensively that you got in Oakland last week. The emotion in the game, the energy in that stadium, the way those guys came out and played, that was, and when I said it going in, if you remember, I said this will be the best game the Raiders play all season.
You did say that.
Absolutely. And it absolutely was, because of what was at stake for them. This is a little different. The stakes are higher for Kansas City than they are for the Raiders in this one. The Raiders are there just to play spoiler. I don't think they have enough on either side of the ball to be able to go into Arrowhead in this type of situation and win the game. Now, if they do, it's going to be because of some fluky things like you had last week where you got the interceptions, you got the 99-yard punt return, maybe they get a kick return, pick six, something like that.
Something happens. Right.
Those are going to be the kinds of things that will keep them in the game, if not help them win the game. I just don't think they have enough. I think Kansas City is going to pull away late in this game and be able to celebrate home field advantage, which they'll squander in their first game anyways.
Well, so if you look at the line, the opening line was 14. I don't know. What's it down to, David? Is it 13.5 now? They go down a little bit? He'll look it up for us. But if you look at the record versus the spread today, the Chiefs 6-9. The Raiders are actually 8-6-1 against the spread. What's the spread at now? Oh, Matt doesn't bet, so he doesn't know. 14. It's still 14. So it's stayed right where it's at.
I didn't see it. I was looking at the plus minus.
You're like, dude, there's a bunch of numbers on here. What does this mean? 8-6-1, the Chiefs against the spread. The Raiders are 6-9. Overall series, by the way, I know Raider fans, Matt, hate the Chiefs. There's no question. But the Chiefs hold the lead on the record 64-53-2. The last meeting, of course, 40-33 was a good game. The Chiefs beat the Raiders on December 2nd. Last week, the Chiefs, again, lost to the Seahawks, who are one of the hottest teams. Now, if you look at the rankings, you were talking about the Raiders' overall offense is 22. Their rush 26. Their pass is 16. So for those Derek Carr haters out there, their middle-of-the-road offense, yeah, that's not where you want to be if you're going to win, but certainly better than they were at the beginning of the year. The Raiders' defense, 25th overall, 30th against the rush. And how about this? 14th against the pass. The Raiders' defense. It's gotten a lot better.
This team in general has gotten a lot better as the season has progressed. We were Tony and I were talking about it on Adrenaline yesterday about Gunther finally putting in some of those blitzing packages and those different schemes. And, they haven't been able to do that. They just haven't had the personnel to be able to leave guys out on an island on the back end of the defense and rush all of those guys in the box. They haven't had the guys that were able to pick up that type of scheme and work that system with that front seven. They haven't had those guys. As the season has progressed, these guys have gotten to learn the system a little better. They're starting to figure things out, and you see them being utilized in a more Paul Gunther type of way. If they continue that with the right pieces, you see what Gunther's going to be able to do with that defense.
Yes, and overall, the Chiefs, of course, this is the challenge, right? Number one overall in offense, 16 in the rush, 3 in the pass. Defense, the Chiefs, not good at all, 31 overall. So they're actually worse than the Raiders on defense. 28th against the rush, 31st against the pass. So if you're Derek Carr and you can connect today, you should be able to rack up some points. The problem is, can you stop the other team from scoring? The Chiefs, again, they can clinch the AFC West and a number one seed throughout the AFC side of the playoffs with a win. Kansas City, 7 of their last 8 games they've won against the Raiders. But, of course, the Raiders have some good things going on here, too. Oakland, here's the thing. The Raiders, Matt, we talked about the defense, and here's the stat, not to kick the proverbial dead horse, but the Raiders have not allowed a 300-yard passing game for a quarterback in 9 straight weeks. So that talks to the improvement there. And, of course, Derek Carr on the other side of the ball, NFL best streak, 325 passes without an interception. So the Raiders are going in the right direction. Are they? Do they have talent to consistently win on a week-by-week basis? Absolutely not.
No, they're going to have another 50+% turnover on this roster, and then you'll see it again going into 2020 because they need to build a winner. This team is not a winner. They're 4-11 as of right now. Now, here's the funny thing is they were a 6-win team last year, right? They won 6 games. If they go in and upset Kansas City, that's a 5-win team for the Raiders. That means they only got worse by 1 game with all of the incredible turnover they had. So everybody that's on this John Gruden hate bandwagon, and we've got comments talking about Derek Carr and he's going to be cut and this and that. Who do you replace him with? If you want to get rid of guys, you have to give me somebody to replace him with. There's nobody coming into this draft this year at quarterback that's going to replace Derek Carr and be a better option. There are no free agents out there at quarterback that's going to replace Derek Carr and be a better option. He's not going to go anywhere.
And we're having a robust discussion on YouTube with our listener and viewer, Steve, who's a great guy and listens in and has a lot of good things to say. We disagree on Derek Carr. Steve doesn't believe Derek Carr is it's time to move on and that he's not a winner.
The team is not a winner. The team hasn't been a winner in 20 years.
Correct. And here's my point. And I agree with Steve from this standpoint. It's a business. So if it's time to move on, you move on from somebody. But here's the reality. You have another year before you have to make that financial choice. And I agree with you, Steve. So we get one more year of Derek Carr in that system before we have to decide whether or not he's the guy or not. That's where I'm at. Now, if they had the first pick in the draft and Herbert was coming out, maybe you have a different take on that. But we'll see. All right, well, we're going to step aside. We have the top of the hour sports update here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas. When we come back, we're going to talk about what we've learned, good and bad, from the Raiders in 2018. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Hey.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Week 17 in the NFL. Are you ready for it to end? I know it's been a rough season.
I'm ready for 2018 to end, just in general. It's been a crazy year, man.
I want it to end because as a radio show and a website that covers the Raiders from a distance, with 18 gone, that means we're closer to the Raiders becoming the Las Vegas Raiders, which is better for us because that means we can actually go see the team practice and cover them. We can catch guys for interviews in the locker room after practice. Those types of things we can't do right now because we're from a distance. And let me add, too, Matt, I want to thank you, too, for the contribution that you've had all year. I'm really proud of the way the show has progressed. I'm a perfectionist, so I always think we got a long way to go. But when it comes to Raiders football and a distinct view of what's happening, and our opinions, of course, are part of that, but the guests we've brought to the table in 2018, we have a high bar. We got to meet it next year and surpass it, of course. But I really appreciate everybody out there listening and watching and the feedback you've given us. But I think we've done a good job of bringing different voices, different people to the table every week to give Raider Nation something to talk about.
Yeah, this isn't the mundane style guest show when you listen to Silver and Black Today. We've got some really great guests. I mean, go back to Rich Gannon just a few weeks ago. We talked about him a little while ago on the show. That's just phenomenal to be able to talk to a guy who has the best knowledge of what it's like to play for John Gruden, to be in that system, to be with that type of personality. We sat here and put on Cliff Branch's Super Bowl rings, man. I mean,
that was fun.
That was awesome to have him in here. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a crazy year, but it's been good, man. We're building.
We are building, and there's a lot of talented media folks in Las Vegas, but I can tell you this, no one else on the radio in Las Vegas locally is doing the job that we are doing covering the Raiders, and we certainly appreciate it. Without all of you listening and watching and reading the website, without all of you, we're not here. So I want to finish this year by thanking all of you for your support and your loyalty. Okay, now we move on. We're going to talk about the 2018. I know we got a game today, the Chiefs and the Raiders, but we want to start to think about what has gone well. We're going to start with that because I know there's a lot of Raider Nation because of the way the last 15 years have been, want to start with negatives. I'm going to start with positives because one of my New Year's resolutions is to accentuate the positive. So at least hopefully for the next few weeks. But if you look at the way this team has gone, Matt, let's first start with this rookie class, right? Because we talked a lot about, we covered the draft, and there was a lot of angst around the first 3 picks in the draft, especially Colton Miller. Let's talk about that. Let's first talk about what has really gone well, and that has been, I think, the interior defensive guys, and that is Maurice Hurst and P.J. Hall.
Yeah, those two. P.J. Hall still has a little ways to go. You see the strength, man. For being a smaller guy in stature, that kid has crazy push. I mean, he's just one of those
strong as hell.
Really strong guys. Mo Hurst, still the draft for the Raiders. We knew that when they got him. When he slipped as far as he did, and the Raiders got him, we were all surprised that he was still on the board. We knew what he could be. He's got 4 sacks on the season. He's had to battle injury a little bit this year. Nothing serious, nothing that's kept him out for too long, but he has had to battle some things, and it's not a very good defensive line and linebacker core anyway. So you can key on a guy like that if you have to. But he's been impressive as well. Those two guys are going to get better. You need to add depth. Vanderdoes is still sitting there. We don't know what he's going to be. Justin Ellis has come back and he's started to get into the fold again. So there is a lot of potential with those guys to be a solid rotation on that front.
Right, and I think we've seen some positive from Arden Key on the edge. He's got a long way to go. Matt, you've been a big proponent of him having to beef up and get stronger, and I think John Gruden echoed those facts this week in his press conference when he said, listen, Arden Key's shown us some great stuff. He's getting in the backfield. He doesn't finish.
Got to finish, yeah.
And I think that's strength.
A lot of it is strength, and the thing that's driven me most nuts about him this season is his inability to, and I don't want to use the word finish again, but to get the guy to the ground
yeah.
to finish those tackles. That's been his thing. And it's not just quarterbacks. He's got guys wrapped
running
up.
Backs,
he's got running backs. He's got guys out on a receiver screen. He's got them in his arms, and he's not pulling them to the ground. They're getting out. He should not be, at this point, a guy that's not strong enough to just bring these guys down when he's an edge rusher with his kind of frame. But, again, we've talked about that since, I don't know, week 2 or 3 watching him. He needs to get bigger. He needs to put some muscle on that huge frame of his.
If the Raiders, and I think they can with the salary cap and where they're selecting in the draft, I think they can improve to an 8-win team next year. I really think they could. But to me, part of that issue is going to be Arden Key has got to make a huge jump from year 1 to year 2. Gruden said that he's already got has a off-season program with one of the best, I don't know what that means, but trainers to strengthen up during the offseason. And I think we have to see him get better, because to have that edge rusher, I assume they're going to try to go out and get another edge rusher in the draft. So if you're going to have those two bookends, young guys, you need Arden Key to be stronger, to be able to finish, to go into next year, to improve yourself by 2 or 3 wins.
And there's no reason to think that they won't be able to do that with him. Like I keep saying, this kid, if you've seen him up close, he's a big guy. There's a lot of room on his frame to add muscle. It's not, he's not a guy like if you look at Mo Hurst or PJ Hall, those guys they're thick, they're stout, right? They can get stronger. You're not getting a lot of mass added to those already huge frames. Key's got a lot of room to grow. I mean, he still looks like a kid that's growing into his body.
Yeah.
He's going to get stronger, man. And you see the speed, you see the moves. He's got a great first step. He gets off the line really quickly. He can get there. He's got to finish those plays. He's got to bring guys down.
Right. And I think, I would talk about, we're going to talk about the offensive linemen, because I think there's been some positives there, clearly. I mean, don't get me wrong. Colton Miller's had his ups and downs, as has Brandon Parker. That line has been beat up. It's just been a mess all year long. We're going to talk about them a little bit in the quote-unquote challenging bad section after the next break. But I do want to say that when Colton Miller and Brandon Parker have played well, you see the flashes. But in the NFL, Matt, it's always about consistency. These guys have to be more consistent. I want to see them have a good game today like they did last week and finish the season on a strong note. I'm
a lot higher on Miller than I am on Parker. I think Colton Miller, and now let's not forget, he's been battling this knee injury for how long? Yeah. We all know that. When he's been healthy, he's looked pretty good. My thing with Miller is he has had more good than he has bad. I think the opposite is true with Parker. There's been more bad there than good. We knew Parker was going to be a little bit more of a project. We figured Miller would be too. We didn't know Miller was going to be thrown into the left tackle spot from day one, but because of the injuries on that line, that's what happened. Hopefully Parker can get better at technique, can get better at leverage, and become a fixture on that right side, because the Raiders have had a really hard time over the last 6-7 years filling that right tackle spot.
Well, and remember, too, I don't think Brandon Parker plays as much this year if Donald Penn doesn't get hurt again. Right. So if Donald Penn is in there and adjusts well to the right side, Brandon Parker gets to be the understudy and come along more slowly, and he's not tossed in there like he has. Yeah. Now, Brandon Parker's also had some great games and some plays that I think show his athletic ability. I like the kid. I still think he has a ways to go as well. But certainly it's encouraging to see that you have two young guys who can play the game. Now, if we look at the veterans, a guy I want to start with, we could start with Garyon Conley because he's been great. We could start with Derek Carr.
Can you consider Conley a vet?
Technically. But I want to start with a guy who I'm really just, especially at the end of the season,
if you say Doug Martin.
Excited about Doug Martin. No, but Doug Martin's rocks. Is Carl Joseph.
Yeah.
You talked about how Gunther has now brought in more of those blitz packages, and to me, that shows the kind of player that Carl Joseph could be. I mean, I'm watching film of him the past week because, again, I'm just really jazzed on him. When he gets in that box, back end of the season, he's been as good as anybody in the league. And he hits hard for his size.
Oh, man.
That guy is a monster.
I mean, you knew that coming out, that he was that kind of guy. The thing about Joseph, safety position is you've been on a football field, man. Safety position is wired differently. You have to have a different set of wiring going on up there to play that position the right way, the way that it needs to be played in football. And Joseph's wired that way. There's no fear when he gets into that line of scrimmage. He comes forward with everything he has, but he does it. He's intelligent in the way that he does it. He finds the crease. He finds that gap so that he can get to the ball carrier. And like you said, he hits a ton. So guys are going down. He doesn't miss very many tackles. He's quick. He's a heavy hitter, and he's a smart football player, and he's wired the right way to play safety in the NFL. You can build with Carl Joseph as a safety. Whether it's free or strong, you can use him.
No, and I love the progression he's made. Of course, Derek Carr, we talked about it earlier in the show, the progression he's made, having some time in John Gruden's system, and with another year, it's only going to get better. Another guy I want to bring up, too, because I'm going to brag, and that is that when the Raiders went out and they were having kicking trouble and they signed Daniel Carlson. Daniel Carlson, to me, is one of the biggest mistakes the Vikings have made this year. Now, I know he had an awful game. It was horrible. You missed three huge kicks. You, in essence, cost your team the game. But this kid came out of college, really good kicker, very consistent. He has been one of the most consistent kickers now in the NFL since the Raiders acquired him. I said that he would be there 5 years. And it's a big deal. When you have now Gruden can mark something off his list. He still needs a punter, in my view.
Needs a punter.
But he doesn't have to worry about that anymore, Matt.
No, he doesn't. And they talked about it on Monday night. They adjusted a couple of his mechanics. Yeah. Got him a little closer on his approach, and that changed everything. Tell you what, Scott, before we go, the biggest takeaway I've had from this team this season, they've gotten better. This team has progressed as the season has gone on. That's what you want to see. Guys didn't quit. Those that probably didn't buy in are gone. I'm sorry, Cooper. Sorry, Irvin. That's how it works. They didn't buy in. They're gone. But this team has gotten better as the season has progressed. They're figuring out the system. Gunther and Gruden know what they're doing. They're going to get this thing righted.
That's right. Couldn't have said it better myself. We're going to step aside when we get back. We'll talk a little bit more about the Raiders' challenges on the roster. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Troiano. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. Don't forget, catch the Silver and Black Today website, silverandblacktoday.com. We have content 24/7 there, as well as you can also find on-demand versions of this radio show, our podcast, and it links to our video. If you're not watching us, you can also watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you're a gamer, you can watch us on Twitch. For the youngins out there, also on Periscope via our Twitter handle, so you can see us there as well. We are back. We are talking about the Raiders in 2018 as we wrap up the season today in Kansas City. We talked about the good, what we've seen from the rookie class and also from veterans. Now we're going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the things that are very difficult and really have a lot more question marks than they do answers at this point. We're going to start with one that's been a mixed bag, Matt, as we talked about in the last segment, and that is the Raiders' offensive line. We talked about the rookies, Colton Miller, Brandon Parker. Then you have Rodney Hudson, who's a rock, doesn't change. Guy should be in the Pro Bowl. He's not. Doesn't matter. He's still the best. Then you've had injuries to Osemele. You've had injuries to Gabe Jackson. You've had, obviously, Donald Penn out for the most of the season. What do they do with this line? Do you think it's just an offseason, need some health, and need to get these rookies back up to snuff so that they're able to progress?
Yeah, you need to be healthy. In 2016, that line, they call them car insurance, if you remember. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Outside of that right tackle spot, you had 4 spots on that line that were solidified with Penn, Osemele, Hudson, and Jackson. Right tackle spot was a bit of a revolving door, but I mean, you've got guys that were there the entire season that were able to protect Carr until that crazy sack from Indianapolis that broke his leg. I mean, he was almost never touched, and that wasn't even on the line. That was him trying to buy time, and Penn slipped a little bit, and he got wrapped up funny, twisted around, and broke his leg. Other than that line was fantastic. This year, you've had no consistency. You've got rookies on the bookends. Osemele being out is huge. I mean, that guy's a monster. And even still, at the beginning of the season, he just didn't look right with the scheme that they were in. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. I don't know that Tom Cable is the right fit. They talked about him at the beginning of the year not trying to shoehorn his own system in, that he was going to adjust to the guys that he has, and I don't know that that's been the case. No. I think guys have been playing in a system that doesn't best fit their attributes. So maybe tweak the system a bit, get guys healthy. I don't think Parker is the starter next year on that right side. I think he still needs time, and whether it's Donald Penn who comes back healthy or they go find somebody else in free agency or in the draft, you've got to solidify that side. I think Colton Miller's not going anywhere. He's the left tackle of the future, and we know the other 3 guys, when healthy, are great.
Yeah, and I think that's what they'll do is they'll go out in free agency and they'll get a couple guys for that right side, maybe even draft again. I'm not saying first or second round, but maybe, who knows? But to me, that's one of the things they're going to have to do is you in the NFL, as everyone who's listening knows because you follow the NFL and you're a fan, you have to have depth. You have to have consistency. So for depth and the needs they got 2 young guys. You have Donald Penn. We'll see if he comes back on a discount next year, if he's healthy. If not, they'll go out and get some veterans. They did the same thing this year. They didn't stick. Probably should have kept a couple of the guys that they let go early on. But I think you'll see them do that. I think they'll have a mixture of young and rent-a-vets for a while and do that as well. Now, if you look at other things that we've learned and seen that were challenges and were negatives at first, it, of course, was quarterback play, which has resolved itself, I believe. But then also you trade Amari Cooper, I still think a good deal. Jordy Nelson has come along here in the last few weeks as he's been healthy. Gruden said as he's gotten healthier. So I think he's had some injuries we didn't know about.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's because Carr's finally throwing the ball to his wide receivers.
That's true, too.
I mean, let's go back to the beginning of the season and talk about how poorly Derek Carr was playing football. I threw out this tweet where I just did some makeshift little artwork and drew a mock of what Derek Carr's pass chart was for the game. And basically all I did was draw a line of scrimmage and draw a bunch of lines from him to the line of scrimmage because that's all he did.
Right.
And then the actual pass chart came out, and it looked almost identical to my nonsense drawing. He never threw the ball down the field. He refused to look at wide receivers. He didn't even target Amari Cooper half the time. He was only going to outlets with Jalen Richard or throwing to his tight end. That's all he was doing. I don't know what's going on with the lights over here.
The lights over here, I don't know.
But that's essentially what was happening. There was no wide receiver action in the game. Now he's throwing the ball to his wide receivers, and you see the difference in the offense. They move the ball down the field.
No, and that's the other thing I was going to say too is if you look at this and you look at a couple games now, it's a team game, but every once in a while, a player can cost you a game. And I think in this case, you look at Derek Carr. And you look at the first game against the Rams, right? A pick against the Rams. That's on him. They could have won that game. Then you have, and this comes from Ed too, who's a good friend, and I agree with him here. Denver, 1-point loss. Miami, first and goal. The Chargers, first and goal. So I think you could legitimately put 2. Some people argue 3 of the losses on Carr because of poor play down the stretch.
The Denver loss, I blame more on Gruden not
coaching,
not coaching.
That's a good
right?
point. That's a great point.
He fell in love with throwing to a fullback who never catches the ball on 4th and 1 when he should have been giving the ball to Marshawn Lynch. He did the same thing down on the goal line, but you can't throw an interception there if you're Carr. The Miami loss was on the defense. I mean, that was a disaster in that fourth quarter. They had the lead going into the fourth. You remember early in the year, they had the lead going into the second half for the first, I think, 5 games of the season. They were tied or had the lead, and the defense was so bad that they just let teams run wild. If you look at their plus-minus in the fourth quarter, it's embarrassing. So I don't know that you can put that all on Carr, but he did make a lot of mistakes in the first 2 months of the season.
And he didn't – one of the things, too, remember when we had Michael Lombardi on, he said, look, you have to do things not to lose games. When you're not a great team, it's not always about doing things to win, but you have to do things to limit the opportunity to make mistakes that give your opponent the chance to win. And I think that's where you quote unquote blame Derek Carr was. I don't think he put his team in the position to win games or even sometimes to stay competitive.
Yeah.
And that's where that rub came overall.
That comes with learning that offense. When
Correct.
you're not sure of where to go with the ball, then you take the safe route, which is the check down, which is what he did so often. But look at his numbers now. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 5, which is crazy. I don't care who you're throwing to.
Right.
He hasn't thrown an interception since week 5, and he's only a couple hundred yards away from 4,000.
Yes.
4,000. I understand this is a passing league now, but 4,000 yards is 4,000 yards. Derek Carr's playing some good football. He's going to be fine.
Well, and I think so too. I think that's one of the things. Now let's talk about coaching, because one of the negatives that I think now I never from a journalist covering the team from the outside, being objective, not being a lifelong Raiders fan like others who cover the team are. I always trusted that Gruden's system and the ability for him to get there would happen. That you had to give it 3 to 4 years really to start to take hold. By the time they get to Vegas, we should know if it's going to be successful. Now, not many people did that, but I will say early on, Matt, John Gruden made some significant mistakes, not only from, I think, a game planning perspective, but also utilizing the personnel he had. It took him time to acclimate, much like these rookies who are playing the game did, to being back in the game. He was not away from the game. He was watching the game constantly. But to get back on the field, managing player personnel, managing personalities, managing coaches, that took some time.
I don't think Gruden knew what he had. Honestly, I don't think he knew what he had in these players. He made a lot of fuss about early in the preseason or in camp about not being able to be out there on the field with his guys. I don't have any time with these guys. We can't even make contact with them. I can't practice with them. I can't do anything with them.
Which was all new to him. Yeah,
and that's something that you have to get used to. But when you're a new coach, it's even harder because you don't understand what you have on the field. Go back to the Mac situation. He didn't want to trade Mac originally. It wasn't about getting draft picks, stockpiling all these draft picks, because he was trading third-round draft picks to bring in receivers that he later cut. That wasn't the issue. He didn't understand what he had. Once the season started to progress, he understood how he needed to coach these guys, how he needed to play call. It's one thing to have a Marcel Reese back there that catches passes all the time from the fullback spot. It's another thing to have Smith back there that doesn't ever. But you're calling plays for him to catch the ball, and it's not working out.
And to me, and we've said this all along on the show, right, as we head towards a break here, is you don't know what you have till you're in there. From the outside, things look a certain way, okay? But you never know what's going on inside the house until you're inside the house. You're living it. You're doing it every day. And to me, that's the issue with Gruden. Now, you can say the Khalil Mack trade was terrible, and at face value, I agree with you. But at the same time, for whatever reason, there was an assessment there. John Gruden looked at from the outside, said, hey, that's a player I want on my team. Then he got in, something happened, and it changed, okay? We don't always know the reasons for why, but you have to trust in the system and trust in the person. And Mark Davis, 10 years, $100 million. By the way, Pete Carroll now makes more. I haven't heard much about that. You have to trust in it, and that's exactly what the Raiders have done. So it's good to see that even some of the negatives are turning into positives as we go along. We're going to step aside. When we come back, attorney Michael Troiano, criminal defense attorney, will join us. We're going to go through the NFL police blotter, which includes an arrest of a former Raider right after this. We'll also talk about New Year's Eve and how you need to stay safe and stay off the roads if you've been drinking. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio.
15 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
We are back here, Silver and Black Today, the end of the season edition. Week 17 of the NFL season as the Raiders go to Kansas City. And as you heard coming in, our sponsor, Michael Troiano, is also here with us in the studio live. And Michael, well, before we get into the police blotter, because we got a couple cases today to talk about, you were making headlines this month, right? I'm watching a national news network, and there's Michael on TV because you had a client do something unusual.
Yeah, I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and that was probably one of the most insane things I've seen in person in a courtroom. He was sentenced to a very harsh punishment, and he basically lost his mind and started trying to basically flip over a desk, got tackled by a bunch of the court marshals. It was quite the scene, and obviously that's why it made national headlines. By
the way, those marshals, if they had a jersey, they could play linebacker for the Raiders because they could use help at linebacker. Yeah. But Michael, I know one of the things too we look at whenever you're on is kind of what's going on in the NFL. It's actually been a much quieter year overall. I mean, we've had some high profile cases with Kareem Hunt and others this year, but we had this past a couple weeks, Monte Nicholson from the Washington Redskins was arrested again, as we talked about the last time you were here, on video. Mm-hmm. TMZ, gotta love TMZ. They're always there, aren't they? Basically cold-cocking somebody, charged with assault, suspended by the NFL. Talk about that case. And again, is this a case of if there's no video, the punishment might not be as big?
Well, again, always video rules in this day and age when it could be shared on social media and Facebook, Instagram, you name it. As far as the crime itself, it looks like the girl that he was with is probably going to get the brunt of the punishment. It seems as if one of the victims had a fractured skull based upon her smacking him with some sort of beer or wine bottle or something with alcohol in it, and that's going to be problematic. And looking at her prior criminal history based upon a recent article that came out, she's already a felon and had a lot of run-ins with the law. I believe 9 incidents in the last couple of years. So I don't know what kind of company he's keeping, but she's certainly not somebody that a professional athlete should be hanging out with.
Well, and one of the things too with the Nicholson issue and the charge, it came to light too that he had some other criminal charges, mostly of DUI.
I believe it was a DUI out of Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania, right? So when you have someone like that or a client who comes for an assault and battery case, but then they have this record of a DUI, how much does that impact when somebody goes in front of a judge on a completely separate issue, completely separate alleged crime? How much does that impact what goes through the judge's head?
Well, it's an important question, and quite honestly, it's one of the first things that I ask a new client when we sit down, and I'm very careful because a lot of times they'll think just Nevada, and they're like, oh, well, I had this attempt murder case in Oklahoma. I'm like, it counts. Anywhere, anything, other than a minor traffic ticket. And then I prefer to have a client with no criminal history because, as you said, when you're dealing with the judge and or the prosecutor, somebody that has no priors is very helpful, right? This is their first time mistake, supposedly. Whereas when you have a client that has a criminal history, it certainly doesn't help. But in a situation like this, if a client was coming into my office being charged with assault and battery and had a prior DUI, I would tell him, look, I'd prefer to walk in and tell the judge, tell the court, hey, my guy's got no priors, he's as clean as it comes. But at the same time, it's not what I call in like the family tree of crimes where a DUI, sure, it's not a good look, obviously, but it's not the same as an assault and battery. Now here, this was an assault and battery that was obviously fueled by alcohol, so it would be a little bit more closely related and become a problem. And I would be addressing that alcohol issue with my client early on to see if we can get him or her the type of help they need that could put them in a better position when we're trying to resolve the case.
Does that carry any weight if it's a non-alcohol related battery, assault, whatever it is, and they have a DUI? Does that DUI carry any weight in the courtroom?
Sure. I mean, at the same time, do I think a judge is going to, if you were sentenced, say you went to trial and lost on your assault and battery charge, and it was non-alcohol related, and you had an old DUI prior, and that was it. I'm sure that they would mention it. It would be discussed as far as, hey, this isn't your first time in the system, but I don't think that a judge would significantly change their punishment. Whereas if you have, and I have a lot of repeat clients that continually get in trouble and get out, and I got one in particular, younger individual, and tell them, hey, I'm happy with the results. We keep getting things dismissed or dropped or lowered, but these things are going to add up, and one day it's going to really come down, and a judge is going to put the hammer because they're going to look at that sheet. So it's something that you've got to always be aware of.
All right, so then we also have this earlier in the month, a name familiar to Raider Nation next to the word disappointment is Barrett Robbins, former center of the Raiders, who, of course, notoriously went MIA the day before the Super Bowl in 2003, where they lost to the Buccaneers and John Gruden. Robbins who has a history of mental illness and a bunch of legal issues, was arrested again, this time possession of cocaine in his car, got pulled over in a car that had stolen tags on it. So the license plate was stolen, the tags were stolen, and he got pulled over, and I guess he's been through it so much, Michael, that he basically said, yeah, I got a crack pipe in the car too. And I got cocaine in there. Somebody like Barrett Robbins now, he's got a long, well-publicized history of severe mental illness and then all of these other crimes. So he gets arrested now. What happens in the system for somebody like this who's had multiple offenses but also has mental issues?
Well, you hope that in a perfect world you address it early, and at least here in Las Vegas and Clark County, we have what's called a mental health court. And when I do have a client who is severely handicapped or maybe even just has some minor issues, if that's going to be something that's important to the prosecution as well as the defense to address it, then we try to get that person in that program to see if we can alleviate any further issues of them picking up future crimes and not send them to prison. This individual, he did 5 years, I believe, for an attempted murder charge.
Yeah.
He's already been in and out. And to kind of circle back to the example earlier of my client who made national news recently, he's an individual that unfortunately never was able to address his mental health issues. He just kept picking up charges, and he's somebody who was very mentally disturbed from a young age. Now, at the same time, I'm not an advocate to say that we should allow these people just to be free, oh, poor me, but I certainly believe if that was addressed early on in his life, he would do much better in a mental health facility or some sort of institution than being locked in a hole in prison.
Mental health is one of those things that's I don't want to say it's overlooked, but it's probably not addressed as seriously as it should be. You mentioned the things they have out here in Nevada for it. How much help are people able to get when they get into these situations? How much help are they able to get within these mental institutions in the state?
There are a lot of resources out here. There's, again, mental health court. There's facilities. We have a lot of sober living facilities that people that are struggling with addiction could go to. A lot of it is free of charge depending upon your status as far as your finances are concerned. The veterans, the VA, so if there's any vets out there that are struggling through issues, I hear stories. It can be burdensome to get those resources, but they're out there, and I would implore anybody to make those steps and get the help that they need before they're sitting in my office facing a serious felony with potential prison time.
Yeah. Again, we're talking to attorney Michael Troiano, criminal defense attorney, TroianoVegas.com, TroianoVegasLaw.com. If you need him, you can also go to our website. You'll see his banner ad there if you want to reach him. Michael, we are coming up on New Year's Eve. It's just hammered into our heads, as it should be, not to drink and drive. People have so many options today. If for some reason they find themselves in a situation where they've made the mistake of drinking and getting behind the wheel, and hopefully they haven't killed somebody, but they find themselves in legal trouble, what do? They get pulled over. They know they've had too much to drink. What's the option? What should they do?
Well, first, you should invoke your right to remain silent. You have no reason whatsoever to provide information to the police officer. Now, sure, they're there just doing their job like everyone else. It doesn't mean that you be difficult with them or fight. you're going to have to get out of the car. You're going to have to produce some identification. But I tell a lot of clients, if you know you've been drinking, at that point, you need to just basically accept the fact that you're going to jail, because a lot of people think they're going to talk themselves out. We've all had that buddy who supposedly talked their way out of a DUI, or the cop didn't notice or whatever, and that's great. But the numbers aren't really there. So in a perfect world, I suggest that you politely invoke your right to remain silent, go to jail. You'll have a choice between a breath or a blood test. Typically, most people don't like needles. I would suggest that you ask for the breath test, because if you ask for a blood test, fine. If you refuse it completely, then they'll call a judge and they'll get a warrant. And 99.99% of the case, all they need to do is find probable cause. And there's going to be a lot more repercussions as far as punishment is concerned if you refuse it. They're going to get it anyway. So I say, be polite, be quiet, answer no questions, and then call me when you get out of jail.
Moral of the story: there's no reason to be combative.
And don't drink or drive. First of all, don't get in the position. Michael is going to stay with us. He's going to talk some football with us, and we'll close out on the drunk driving issue as well right after the break. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back, Raider Nation. We are here on the Silver and Black Today ahead of the Raiders' last game of the season in Kansas City against the Chiefs.
Already, man.
It's
Season's
insane.
over.
It's insane, man. It's come
Been
so
over
quick.
for a while for the Raiders, let's be honest. But
it has. But
nothing else
we
to watch
said,
on the
Matt,
field.
when everything went to crap earlier in the season, we said, hey, we just want to see progression. If you start to see progression, especially key positions, especially with coaching, that would be a good outcome in a bad season.
Most importantly, with Derek Carr.
Correct.
We've seen it.
And we've seen it.
He's going to hit 4,000 yards today, man. Kansas City's defense is trash.
I agree.
It is. The defense is trash.
It is. And we are also joined by one of Las Vegas's top criminal defense attorneys, and that, of course, is Michael Troiano, a proud sponsor of the Silver and Black Today. We were just talking to him about the police blotter in the NFL, as well as New Year's Eve, and the fact that you do not need to get behind the wheel if you've been drinking and driving. If you do, Michael was just telling us that you should invoke your right to silence. Now, Michael, to tie that up before we start talking football, because you are a football fan too, you get pulled over, you invoke your right to not say anything, to incriminate yourself. They take you to jail. You have to submit to a breath or a blood test. Once that happens, what's the next step?
Once you submit to the breath test and you're over the legal limit, then they'll formally book you at that point if they haven't already. Then you're going to be in there for at least 12 hours. Usually it's closer to 24, even if you post bail immediately or receive an OR, or what we call an own recognizance release, which you release from jail with a promise to appear without posting bail. And then at that point, before you leave the station, they'll make you do another breath test because you're in their custody. So if you were completely trashed that night, you might be sitting in jail a lot longer than somebody who only had a few drinks, because they're not going to allow someone to leave the jail who's still intoxicated.
Interesting. Okay, so interesting. So if somebody does get in trouble, though, they need an attorney.
Sure.
How does that process work? So middle of the night, somebody's in jail, you get a call.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody needs you, or they have someone that they love, goes to TroianoVegasLaw.com, and they call you. What's the process as an attorney? You wait until the morning, right? There's no sense in going because you can't get them out then anyway?
You can't get them out in the middle of the night. What'll happen is at that point is you'll explain to them two choices. If there's a bail amount that's already set, and usually with the first DUI it's around $2,000 to $3,000 depending on which court you're in, you could hire a bail bondsman. And the benefit to that is that it's a smaller percentage, so you only pay about 10 to 15% of whatever the total bail amount is, and a lot of people need that option. But if you actually have the finances, if you got the $2,000 or $3,000 laying around that you can go without for a bit, then I suggest not using the bail bondsman and posting the cash bail yourself, because I, as an attorney, can get that money back for you. Full 100% of it, down to every single penny, regardless of the outcome of the case. Even if it's a triple murder case and your family puts up $1 million cash bail, as long as you don't run off to Mexico or something like that, even if you're convicted on each and every charge, you're going to get 100% of it back. So I tell the clients, look, if there's a bail amount, let's post it, give them those options. If not, then we will wait for the next court date. Usually within 48 to 72 hours, let's say there's a very high bail amount because it's an extremely serious charge, and I will go in there and make an argument to the judge to reduce the bail and get them out on a much smaller amount or no bail whatsoever, but maybe have them on house arrest or some sort of other monitoring system. And that's essentially how the process starts as far as getting on the case, being retained by the client and or their family, and getting them out of custody, hopefully, so we can start fighting the matter.
I know it's a zero tolerance anyways, but tomorrow night is the marquee night for chaos. I mean, just around the world, really. How much is that presence stepped up tomorrow night, especially looking for DUIs?
Are you talking about police presence?
Yeah.
I have many friends who are in local law enforcement out here who work for Metro, Henderson, you name it, and I don't believe any of them ever have New Year's off. It's basically all hands on deck. They're going to be out there. They're going to be looking for you. That's why take the Ubers, take the Lyfts, have the sober friend, be the designated driver. Paying the surge charge, as annoying as it may be when you see that on the Uber or Lyft price, is definitely a lot cheaper than retaining my services.
All right, so now, again, TroianoVegasLaw.com if you need Michael's help, or if you know somebody who makes the mistake of getting behind the wheel, and drinking this holiday season, but just make sure they don't. Make sure you're the call they make, and you can give them a ride or send an Uber for them, whatever it may be. So, Michael, let's switch to football now. You find yourself in a very precarious position today as a Steelers fan. The Steelers need the Browns to win. How does that make you feel?
It's almost undescribable. The hatred runs deep. But to be honest with you, the Browns have been bad for so long, I don't consider it a rivalry. I mean, they've just dominated them. The Steeler-Ravens rivalry is much stronger in my lifetime. It's kind of like, unfortunately, when people say, oh, the Patriots and the Steelers have a rivalry. I'm like, no, they don't. Brady just goes in there and kills them almost every time. I mean, I've seen it in person. So I will obviously be rooting for the Steelers, and I will be rooting for the Browns to beat a tough Ravens team so they can sneak into the playoffs. But, if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago where the Steelers were going to be, especially after that Patriots win, I was on my high horse. I thought we'd be up there in a 1 or 2 seed, and Big Ben and company might be sitting at home or on the beach with some margaritas watching.
We just heard that same sentiment echoed from Carrington Harrison early on about the Chiefs and the Raiders rivalry, and the Raiders not even being on the map anymore, and the Broncos are now their biggest rival.
That's right.
That means that the Raiders are in the same company as the Browns.
Oh,
that's
you put those two connections together.
That's where we've gone, man. That's how far this has fallen, guys.
Remember to add Matt on that one, Raider Nation.
Bring it.
Okay, so real quick, because we have a couple minutes left, want to get from you guys, who is the team to beat on the AFC side, Michael, when it goes into the playoffs?
That would be the New England Patriots.
Still,
always,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's got to be. Now, the one thing about the Patriots is they don't have home field this year. They may get a first-round bye still, but they're not going to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which they seemingly have every single season. And I think that makes a big difference when they don't get to play that home game in January. I don't think the Chiefs have a good enough defense to be the team to beat. I just don't. I think their offense is second to none, but I don't think they have a good enough defense to carry them through the playoffs. So, unfortunately, you've got to look at the Patriots, but, I mean, Texans have a great defense. Ravens still have that defense. There are some teams out there that can make some noise.
The Chargers, but the Chargers choke on offense when it comes to big games.
Always.
I think I'm with you guys, although I'm going to take the Chiefs, okay, because I think as bad as their defense is, I think hosting Brady in Kansas City, which is I think what's going to happen, hosting Brady in Kansas City, I think despite Mahomes' youth, I think they're going to squeak it out. I think it's going to be a barn burner on that side. Now, on the NFC side, I'm sticking with the Rams. As much as I like Drew Brees and the Saints and their defense, I just think the Rams, I think it's their year. What do you guys think?
I think the Rams lose to the Bears.
Wow.
I think the Bears defense is one of those defenses that can go in. Got a guy like Mack. They all go in and just they're gonna wreak havoc. But I don't think anybody goes into the dome and beats the Saints.
Michael, how about you?
I don't want to be a front runner and pick the Saints, and I have been worried the last couple of games. Drew's definitely taken it down a notch, but I think he'll be ready to go. I think the Saints are going to get through, and as far as the AFC side's concerned, it'll probably be the Patriots, but I'm rooting for Phillip Rivers to get a ring.
All right.
See the gold and black in the Super Bowl. Oh, it's not the Knights. Dang it.
We will see how it all goes. Again, thanks for joining us. We will talk to you next week, and make sure you catch the show on demand up on our website, silverandblacktoday.com. Also, iTunes and everywhere else you get your podcasts. For Matt Gutierrez, for our guest, Michael Troiano,
Happy New Year.
For our engineer, David Stepanian, I am Scott Branson. We'll talk to you next time here, Raider Nation, on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We'll talk to you next time.
This is